Emilia stepped out of the taxi, and Paris hit her all at once. The cold, bright morning air, the endless sea of golden rooftops, the sunlight sliding across the Seine like liquid gold. Somewhere down the street, an accordion whispered a melody that felt almost too cinematic to be real. She tightened her grip on the suitcase, the same old suitcase that carried everything she had left behind. A job she outgrew, a life that stopped inspiring her. A version of herself she no longer wanted to be. She had crossed the entire ocean for this moment, for a dream that wasn't fully formed, just a feeling she couldn't ignore. Paris, glamorous, romantic, the city of second chances, was supposed to welcome her with open arms. Instead, it towered above her, huge, dazzling, and a little bit intimidating. And Emilia suddenly wondered, did she make her apartment building, a small cream-colored structure tucked between two larger, imposing facades, looked charming in the photos online, but the reality was different. The front door was ajar, a tiny brass bell jingling as she pushed it open. An elderly concierge peeked from a shadowy corner, eyebrows raised in mild suspicion. "Ah, Mademoiselle Carte, you here?" he asked, his accented English curling strangely around the words. "Yes," she said, her voice wobbling just a little. "I'm here." Dropping her suitcase onto the stone steps, she felt a jolt of nerves. This was the first real step into a life she had imagined countless times. A deep inhale, a shaky laugh, and she was inside. The apartment was small, tiny really, with high ceilings and peeling paint that whispered stories of past residents. A faucet dripped steadily in the kitchen. A lone light bulb dangled precariously from the ceiling, and a pile of unopened mail sat like a monument to neglect. She set her suitcase down and allowed herself a moment to breathe, taking in the tiny balcony overlooking the street below. The view was charming, if not exactly cinematic, and somewhere in her chest a small flame of hope flickered. She opened her laptop and immediately saw the first email from Sylvie, her new Parisian boss. "Welcome to Paris, Emilia. Let's see if you can survive my office, Sylvie." Emilia rolled her eyes and muttered under her breath, "Survive? I barely survived the flight." But deep down, she felt a thrill. This was exactly what she had wanted. A challenge, a new life, a leap into the unknown. Downstairs, the courtyard was alive with morning activity. A small fountain gurgled, pigeons strutted across the stone, and a young woman sang for spare change. She had a voice that floated effortlessly through the air, bright and melodic. Emilia collided with her accidentally while fumbling with the keys. "Bonjour! You look lost. Are you lost?" the woman asked, her dark eyes sparkling. I guess I am," Emilia admitted. "First day in Paris. Career, life, all new." The woman laughed, a warm, infectious sound. "Then you will love it. Paris will test you, confuse you, maybe even seduce you, all in one day." She introduced herself as Mei Chen, a singer and a whirlwind of energy with a sense of humor that immediately put Emilia at ease. Within minutes, they were walking together down the narrow streets of the neighborhood. Mei pointed out the small bakery with the perfect croissants, the corner cafe where the barista knew everyone by name. and a hidden alley where the murals were so Instagrammable that Emilia could already picture herself posting. As they rounded a corner, Emilia's world tilted slightly. She collided with a man carrying a bag of groceries, and they both dropped their items. He bent down, brushing his hand against hers as they reached for the same baguette. Their eyes met, a flash of connection, and Emilia's heart betrayed her with a small flutter. "Oh, sorry, that's my fault," he said, his voice calm but warm. "No, mine too, I'm so sorry," Emilia replied, cheeks warming. They straightened, both smiling awkwardly. A laugh escaped her before she could stop it, and he smiled back, faintly embarrassed. From across the street, a woman waved. Camille, elegant and poised. A subtle warning of complications Emilia hadn't anticipated. Her stomach twisted. This was going to be more complex than she thought. By the time she reached her new office, Savoir, Emilia was both exhilarated and exhausted. The building was sleek and modern, yet had an unmistakable Parisian elegance. Inside, the receptionist looked up with a polite smile, and then Sylvie appeared. Tall, impeccably dressed, and radiating authority, Sylvie's eyes scanned Emilia like she was a subject in an experiment. "Mademoiselle Carter, bienvenue, chaos incarné," she said flatly. Emilia froze, fumblant her papier. Misprononcer un simple français et knoquant over un petit fauteuil de faux d'air. She bandonnait pour retirer les pépins. Ses joues brunes sentit le poids de tout regard. Sylvie, au lieu, full bully, taillenne à tes lips. Demain, tu lui dois voir la première émission de la campagne. Emilia exhaled slowly, a mix of dread and excitement twisting in her chest. Paris wasn't going to wait for her to adjust. It was going to throw her in fully, and she had to swim or sink. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the sounds of the city seep in, the distant hum of traffic, the laughter of people outside cafés, the clatter of heels on cobblestones, and whispered to herself, "I can do this. I will do this. Somehow." The sun continued to rise, casting golden light across the rooftops, and Emilia realized that her adventure had officially begun. Paris was alive, seductive, unpredictable, and utterly beautiful. And she was standing right in the middle of it, ready or not to become part of its story. Emilia woke the next morning to the soft chime of her alarm and the smell of fresh croissant drifting up from the street below. She had barely slept. Her mind was a carousel of fears and anticipations. The email from Sylvie replayed in her head. "Tomorrow, you are leading the first campaign meeting. Don't fail." But today, her real challenge was navigating the office itself. Savoir was sleek, modern, and intimidatingly chic. The kind of place where everyone wore designer labels as though it were an armor, and the coffee machines hissed like they held all the secrets of Parisian marketing. As she walked through the polished lobby, she caught snippets of conversations in French, a melodic stream that she mostly didn't understand, though she could sense the undertones of sarcasm, rivalry, and camaraderie. Luc and Julia, two colleagues whose energy radiated self-importance, were immediately suspicious. "Ah, the American girl," Luc said, his accent thick, his grin thin. "You're going to survive here?" Julian smirked and added, "We'll see. Paris isn't for everyone." Emilia forced a smile, realizing that her naive optimism would have to do more work today than she ever had imagined. Her desk was a small corner, neat but impersonal, facing a wall of sleek monitors. She unpacked her laptop and glanced at the campaign brief on her screen. It was for a luxury brand, one she had admired from afar, but never dared dream to handle personally. She tried to steady her breathing, repeating to herself, "I am prepared, I am capable, I will outfail." The morning was a blur of introductions, whispered commentary in French, and the occasional raised eyebrow from Sylvie. Emilia tried her best to nod at everything she understood, laugh politely when something sounded funny, and type furiously to keep up with the barrage of emails and Slack messages. By mid-morning, disaster struck. A simple error in formatting the client presentation caused the slides to collapse on the screen. A cascade of misplaced images and awkward text. Luke's eyebrows shot up. Julien smirked. Sylvie appeared suddenly behind her chair, arms crossed. "Mademoiselle Carter, is this your first attempt at professionalism?" Sylvie asked, her tone icy, but not unkind. Emilia flushed, stammering, I will fix it right away, I promise." As she scrambled to correct the error, she felt May's earlier words echo in her mind. "Paris will test you, confuse you, maybe even seduce you." Yes, it was testing her, and she would either sink or swim. Just as she hit send on the corrected slides, a quiet voice came from the other side of the room. "May I suggest a small adjustment?" Emilia looked up to see Gabriel, standing with his usual calm elegance, dark hair falling slightly over his eyes. A hint of a smile playing on his lips. He bent down over her laptop, his fingers lightly brushing the keyboard as he made a tiny edit. It was subtle, professional, and yet intimate, and Emilia felt her stomach twist in a way she had not expected. "Thank you," she said, cheeks warm. "I really appreciate it." Gabriel just nodded, his gaze lingering for a beat too long before he turned away. Across the office, Camille watched from a distance, poised, aware, a silent challenge in her eyes. Emilia's mind spun. She had barely arrived, and already she was entangled in complexities she had only seen in movies. Lunch was no refuge. Emilia and May wandered to a nearby café, the kind with wrought iron chairs and the scent of fresh pastries that curled around their senses. May ordered without hesitation, chatting animatedly in French to the barista, while Emilia attempted to follow along, smiling and nodding. When the croissants arrived, golden and flaky, Emilia's nerves softened slightly. "You survived your first morning," May said, nudging her gently. "Congratulations! But Paris isn't done with you yet. Today, it tests your charm, your wits, and your heart. Be prepared." And indeed, it did. As they returned to the office, Camille appeared at the entrance, radiant in a tailored coat, carrying a portfolio. "Emilia," she called brightly, "I was hoping to see you. We should discuss Gabriel's new campaign idea." Emilia froze, heart racing. She had just survived the morning, and now she was stepping directly into a web of social intricacy where every word mattered. Camille's smile was effortless, perfect, a reminder that this world of style, influence, and subtle competition was not designed to be easy. Back at her desk, Sylvie's sharp gaze followed Emilia like a hawk. Each action, each glance, each stumble was being measured. Yet, in that moment, something shifted. Emilia realized that the chaos, the confusion, and even the romantic tension were exactly why she had come here. Paris demanded growth, demanded courage, and perhaps, if she played it right, it might even reward her. The afternoon brought a small triumph. A last-minute client question, one that had seemed impossible, found an answer in Emilia's creativity. A post idea that combined charm, sophistication, and wit. The client responded instantly. A brief email, enthusiastic and impressed. Emilia's heart soared. For the first time, she felt a sliver of confidence that she belonged here, that maybe, just maybe, she could navigate Paris's labyrinthine streets of love, ambition, and culture. Yet, the victory was bittersweet. As she packed her things at the end of the day, Gabriel approached her once more, holding a small coffee cup in his hand. "I thought you might need this," he said softly, handing it over. Their fingers brushed, lingering in a way that made Emilia's chest tighten. "Thank you," she whispered, voice barely audible. The quiet intimacy of the moment hung in the air, delicate and charged, a silent acknowledgement of something neither dared to name. As Emilia stepped out of the office into the glowing Parisian evening, she glanced over her shoulder at the sleek building, at the shadow of Sylvie standing in the doorway, at Camille's poised figure in the distance, and at Gabriel disappearing down the hall. Her mind buzzed with possibilities, fears, and unspoken questions. Paris was testing her every second, and she realized that she was beginning to rise to the challenge, one awkward, exhilarating, heart-fluttering moment at a time. The evening air in Paris was soft and fragrant, carrying hints of freshly baked bread, roasted coffee, and faint perfume from the streets below. Emilia wandered with May along the Seine, the water reflecting the city's lights in long golden ribbons. The day's chaos, office errors, Sylvie's icy stare, Camille's perfectly timed interventions, still churned in her mind. But for a moment, she allowed herself to simply breathe, to watch the city sparkle. May noticed Emilia's tension and nudged her gently. "You're thinking about Gabriel again," she said knowingly. Emilia's cheeks flushed. "How did you know?" she whispered, half embarrassed, half exasperated. May laughed, a worn, musical sound. "Because you can't stop looking at him every time he appears in your life. He's like Paris itself, impossible to ignore." They paused at a small bridge, watching boats drift by under the warm glow of street lamps. Emilia felt a strange mixture of exhilaration and anxiety. Gabriel had been kind, patient, and subtly intimate today. Yet Camille's presence lingered like a shadow, a reminder that the world she had stepped into was not a simple playground for romance. The next morning, the office was buzzing with the energy of preparation for a new campaign. Sylvie was, as always, sharp and formidable, hovering at the edge of every conversation, her eyes assessing, her tone decisive. Emilia sat at her desk, reviewing client notes, determined not to repeat yesterday's mistakes. Luc and Julien whispered behind their hands, throwing her occasional skeptical glances, but she ignored them. Today, she would prove herself. During a brief coffee break, Gabriel approached her desk, carried 2 cups d'espresso. "Thought you could use a refill," he said, smiling slightly. Emilia accepted la cup, their fingers brushing again, the electricity between them undeniable. "Thanks," she replied softly, heart racing. Camille apparut de l'autre côté, perfectement poésie, portfolio en somme. Emilia, she said, her tone polite but with an unmistakable edge. I thought you might want to join me for a quick review of Gabrielle's concept. It's delicate. Emilia hésitait. The offer sounded collaborative, but she knew Camille's charm masked careful strategy. Still, she nodded. She had to navigate this carefully. One wrong step could alienate the people she needed most in this city. In the meeting room, the tension was palpable. Camille laid out the campaign proposal with precision, Gabrielle interjecting occasionally with calm, thoughtful suggestions. Emilia listened, her mind racing. The brand needed something fresh, something unexpected. Suddenly an idea sparked, a bold concept that intertwined classic Parisian romance with modern style, clever and visually striking. She suggested it cautiously. Gabrielle's eyes widened slightly. Camille raised an eyebrow. Sylvie, who had arrived unexpectedly, observed silently from the doorway. That's interesting, Gabrielle said finally, leaning back. It could work. Camille's smile was tight, polite, almost imperceptibly competitive, but she said nothing further. Emilia felt a surge of pride. For the first time, her instincts had mattered in this office. After the meeting, Emilia returned to her desk, mentally exhausted but quietly triumphant. May appeared again at her side, carrying a small pastry. I think someone is impressed, she said slyly, nodding toward Gabriel, who was now reviewing notes across the room. Emilia tried to focus on work, but she could feel the weight of the unspoken tension, the subtle pull of desire and complication that Paris seemed to weave into every corner of her life. As the day moved on, Emilia handled client requests, answered emails, and even navigated a small misunderstanding with Luc, who had tried to undermine her suggestion in a sly comment. She corrected it with tact, earning a rare approving nod from Sylvie, who had been observing the entire interaction. Emilia allowed herself a small, triumphant smile. Perhaps she could indeed survive here. Perhaps she could even thrive. The late afternoon brought a moment of quiet reflection. Emilia stepped onto her small balcony, looking over the rooftops bathed in golden light. She thought of her life back home, the simplicity and predictability she had left behind. Paris was messy, overwhelming, and unpredictable, but it was alive. And in that chaos, she felt the stirrings of something thrilling. The possibility of love, of adventure, of becoming the person she had always imagined herself to be. As the city lights deepened, Gabriel appeared at the office window opposite her balcony, holding a coffee cup. He caught her gaze, and they shared a long, silent moment, communicating volumes without a word. Emilia's chest tightened with anticipation. There was a tension between them, romantic, electric, and utterly consuming. She knew that this connection, fragile and new, would shape much of what came next. Meanwhile, Camille, noticing the interaction from across the office, narrowed her eyes slightly. There was a calculation in her gaze, a silent plan forming. Emilia's heart skipped a beat, not just because of Gabriel, but because she was slowly realizing that the romantic intrigue, office rivalry, and Parisian charm were all intricately linked, forming a web she would have to navigate with care, wit, and courage. Emilia sat back in her chair, exhausted but exhilarated. She had survived the day's challenges, asserted herself in the office, and yet the complexity of her new world was undeniable. Gabriel smiled at her from across the room. Camille's eyes watched carefully, and Sylvie's presence lingered like a shadow over every decision. Paris was testing her, teasing her, and enchanting her all at once, and Emilia, standing at the center of it all, felt the thrill of living in a city that demanded everything and promised everything in return. Night had fallen over Paris, but the city glowed like a golden jewel. The streets were alive with the hum of late cafés, distant laughter, and the occasional click of high heels on cobblestones. Emilia lingered on her balcony, the city lights reflecting in her eyes, feeling the weight of the day's triumphs and failures settle around her like a warm, chaotic blanket. She had survived her first day at Savoir, navigated a delicate campaign meeting, earned a small victory, and yet her mind couldn't stop racing. Gabrielle, Camille, Sylvie, each presence loomed over her in a way that was thrilling and terrifying all at once. Gabrielle's figure appeared de la courrière de Bello, carryant une petite coupe de café. Il a regardé voir Emilia sur son balcon et sourire. Le geste était simple, mais il emportait une intimité, une quiet acceptation des moments partagés de la journée et la connexion subtile entre eux. Emilia, sa pointe s'érissait. Elle voulait aller lui appeler, mais il a resté au balcon, savourant le moment, en étant harmonie, comme le Paris des mêmes. Inside leur appartement, May limbarde devant la porte, regardant Emilia avec un sourire conscient. « Tu es une galère, tu sais ?» il lui dit. « Comment voulez dire ?» Emilia, prenant une bouffée de vin, ça paraît pu se débattre. « Tu es Paris, tu as Sylvie, Camille et Gabriel à côté de toi. Ils sont tous en compliqué. » May, c'est à savoir que l'excitant. Emilia laughed softly, shaking her head. She wanted simplicity, predictability, but Paris offered neither. Instead, it offered a series of intricate, emotionally charged encounters that tested her wit, her charm, and her courage. The phone rang, breaking the quiet. It was a message from Sylvie. Tomorrow, Mademoiselle Carter, you will lead the brainstorming session for our largest client. Don't disappoint. Emilia swallowed hard. A mixture of fear and excitement twisting in her stomach. She was learning quickly that Paris demanded excellence, poise, and a little bit of boldness, and she would have to rise to every challenge. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. Camille stood there, a soft smile on her lips, holding a portfolio. I thought you might want to see this before tomorrow. Some ideas Gabriel and I discussed. I thought it might inspire you. Emilia's heart raced. Camille's presence was always a delicate balance of mentorship, rivalry, and subtle control. Thank you, Emilia said cautiously, taking the papers. I appreciate it. Camille lingered, studying Emilia for a long moment. You're different from what I expected. Not bad, just bold. Watch yourself. Then she left, leaving Emilia with a shiver and a heightened sense of anticipation. Emilia poured herself another cup of coffee and stepped onto the balcony again. The city sparkled beneath her, the Eiffel Tower a distant sentinel glowing in the night. She thought of Gabriel, of Camille, of Sylvie, of May, and of herself. A small, somewhat lost American girl in a city that demanded sophistication, courage, and a touch of daring. She smiled to herself, realizing that chaos and beauty often went hand in hand in Paris, and perhaps she was exactly where she was meant to be. As she turned to leave the balcony, her phone buzzed. A message from Gabriel. "We should talk. Don't ignore me." Emilia's breath caught. She hadn't expected this. Her fingers hovered over the screen, heart pounding, and she typed back carefully. "Tomorrow?" The city hummed around her, lights twinkling, voices drifting, and the faint echo of accordion music playing somewhere far below. Paris had welcomed her with challenges, laughter, romance, and intrigue, and it was only the beginning. Emilia closed her eyes, letting the warmth of the city seep into her. She had survived her first day, navigated the labyrinth of work and social intrigue, and discovered the first sparks of something she couldn't yet name. Paris had tested her, and she had passed, for now. But tomorrow promised more. More challenges, more tension, more laughter, and more heart-stopping moments that would define her first steps in this mesmerizing, complicated, irresistible city. And as the night wrapped Paris in a golden glow, Emilia whispered to herself, "I'm ready. Let's see what you've got, Paris."